Today, I will be recapping a movie titled Kingdom of Heaven. The movie is set during the 12th century and tells a fictionalized story of a blacksmith named Balian of Ibelin, who becomes involved in the events of the Crusades and ultimately defends the city of Jerusalem. While the film is set against the backdrop of real historical events, many of the characters and specific plot elements are fictionalized for dramatic purposes. It is not a strictly accurate historical account. In a distant French village during the year 1184, Balian, a blacksmith with a past as a warrior, grapples with the recent tragedy of his wife's suicide following the loss of their unborn child. Unexpectedly, Balian's life undergoes a significant change when a contingent of Crusaders, led by his long-lost father, Baron Godfrey of Ibelin. As Godfrey rides through the village in search of a blacksmith, he then introduces himself to Balian as his father and begs for forgiveness in hopes that his son will accompany him to Jerusalem. However, Balian, who is still grieving over his wife's death, declines the offer and firmly informs Godfrey that he won't be going to Jerusalem. Recognizing Balian's resolve, Godfrey bids his farewells and departs. The local priest, who is Balian's corrupt half-brother, he confesses to orchestrating the arrival of the Crusaders and ordering the beheading of Balian's wife before her burial, hoping to persuade Balian to go to the Holy Land. Enraged by this revelation, Balian kills him during their confrontation. In search of forgiveness and redemption for himself and his wife, Balian decides to follow his father. As Balian catches up to his father, Godfrey becomes his swordsmanship mentor. However, soldiers sent by Godfrey's brother and led by Godfrey's nephew arrive to apprehend Balian. Godfrey refuses to surrender Balian, resulting in a fierce battle where many of Godfrey's men are killed, and Godfrey is fatally injured. Earlier in the film, it was revealed that Godfrey's brother and nephew had sinister intentions to eliminate him and his followers to seize the title of Baron of Ibelin. While continuing their journey to Jerusalem, they arrive at the port of Messina and encounter fellow Crusaders. Among them is Guy de Lusignan, who takes the opportunity to taunt Geoffrey for having brought his illegitimate son along on the journey to Jerusalem. As Godfrey lays in his bed, he tells Balian about Jerusalem and its people, and how he wishes that one day Muslims and Christians will live together in peace. Balian is reminded of his knightly oath to fearlessly face enemies, always speak the truth, and protect the vulnerable, and uphold justice and peace as Baron of Ibelin. As Balian embarks on his journey to Jerusalem from the port of Messina, his ship is ravaged by a violent storm, resulting in the loss of all passengers except for Balian and a lone horse. After the wreckage, Balian wakes up on a beach and encounters a Muslim cavalier and his servant. The Muslim man asserts that the horse belongs to him since it's on his land. Balian and the man engage in a dispute about the horse's ownership. A struggle over the horse ensues, resulting in Balian defeating the horseman but showing mercy to the servant. He tells the servant that he will spare his life and requests the servant's guidance to lead him to Jerusalem. Upon reaching Jerusalem, Balian presents the horse to the servant and sets him free. The man subsequently reveals that his deceased master held a significant position among the Saracen knights. Once acknowledged as the new Lord of Ibelin by Godfrey's followers, Balian quickly familiarizes himself with the key figures in Jerusalem's political landscape, including the Marshal of Jerusalem, Tiberius, a good, honorable man, and King Baldwin IV's most trusted advisor, Princess Sibylla, King Baldwin IV's sister, and Guy de Lusignan, an arrogant and scheming man. Married to Sibylla, a guard informs Tiberius that the king wishes to meet Geoffrey's son upon meeting the King of Jerusalem, also known as the Leper King. He informs Balian that his father was a beloved friend to him, and also of the land that his father left behind, and that Balian must now tend to it and its people. Taking on his role as the fresh Baron of Ibelin, Balian establishes himself in his newfound domain. Utilizing his blacksmithing expertise, he garners the admiration of his knights and subjects by constructing an irrigation system. Guy, along with his accomplice, Reynold, orchestrates a brutal assault on a Muslim trade caravan with assistance from the Templars. In response, the king reveals that due to Reynold's actions, Saladin, the Muslim leader, is advancing his forces to besiege Kirak, Reynold's castle. Consequently, Jerusalem is compelled to gather its army and confront the Muslim forces in battle. Balian makes the choice to shield the villagers as they seek refuge inside the castle from Saladin's cavalry. Despite being outnumbered, Balian and his knights launch an attack on Saladin's mounted forces, granting the villagers an opportunity to reach the safety of the castle. Unfortunately, Balian's knights are eventually overcome and captured. In the opposing camp, Balian discovers that the servants he spared, Imad ad-Din, is actually Saladin's chancellor. Imad ad-Din then allows Balian to enter Kirak. Saladin arrives with his forces to lay siege to Kirak, while King Baldwin IV approaches with his own army. The two leaders negotiate a Muslim withdrawal, and Baldwin pledges to hold Reynold accountable for his actions. King Baldwin fulfills his promise to Saladin and takes action against Reynold. However, the strain of these events leads to Baldwin's collapse, and his condition deteriorates beyond any hope of recovery. Later that night, Baldwin suggests that Balian marry Sibylla and emphasizes that allowing Guy to become king would prolong the war with the Muslims. However, Balian refuses, as he doesn't want to be involved in any scheme to assassinate Guy. Sibylla expresses her love for Balian and regrets that he didn't accept her brother's proposal. After Baldwin's death, Sibylla's young son, Baldwin V, becomes the king of Jerusalem. Unfortunately, he also contracts leprosy. Sibylla notices that the boy seems to not feel pain. Stunned by this, she immediately has the boy tested, but the physician confirms the boy indeed has leprosy. She cannot imagine her son living behind a mask all his life. Sibylla gives him poison, abdicates the throne in favor of her son, and shortly afterward, she names Guy as the king of Jerusalem. Guy sets Reynold free and tells him to start a war. Guy also sends some Templars to kill Balian, but Balian overcomes them and manages to escape, and Reynold provokes a conflict by killing Saladin's sister. In response, when Saladin sends an envoy to request his sister's body, the punishment of those responsible, and the surrender of Jerusalem, Guy responds by beheading the envoy and sending his head back to Damascus. In 1187, a holy war is called upon with the belief that it's God's will. Guy, driven by his ego, believes he can lead the army to confront Saladin and achieve victory. Despite Balian's wise counsel that the army should not leave the safety of Jerusalem's walls, warning that the city would be defenseless, Guy dismisses his advice. They march into the desert without enough water supplies, leaving Jerusalem vulnerable. Saladin's forces engage the Crusader army near the city of Hattin, resulting in the complete destruction of the Crusader forces. Guy and Reynold are taken prisoner, and Reynold is executed by Saladin. Saladin spares Guy's life based on tradition, but expresses that Guy is unworthy of such mercy. With the Crusader army failing to return, Balian and Tiberius embark on a journey into the desert to find them. As they discover that the Jerusalem army has been defeated, Tiberius informs Balian that Saladin will soon advance toward Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, Balian takes charge of fortifying the defenses, even though the Patriarch suggests fleeing. He also knights several men-at-arms, believing that knighthood improves their combat skills. They understand that defeating the Saracens is unlikely, so their goal is to delay the enemy and hope that the Saracens eventually propose terms. As Saladin's catapults relentlessly showered the city with fire day and night, panic spread through Jerusalem. Balian had strategically placed traps that made it challenging for Saladin's forces to breach the walls. However, a weak point in the wall was eventually identified, prompting Saladin to order his men to concentrate their efforts there. Balian saw this as an opportunity to confront and defeat the Saracen army. After 3 days of unwavering determination, Saladin proposed terms. Balian would surrender Jerusalem in exchange for the safe passage of all its inhabitants to Christian lands. Balian reminded Saladin of the brutal massacre of Muslim inhabitants by the Crusaders when they previously conquered Jerusalem a century ago. Saladin reassured him that he was not like those men. After careful consideration of the terms and reflecting on all that had transpired, Balian made the decision to surrender Jerusalem to Saladin. Upon his return to the city, Balian informed the people of the surrender and assured them of safe passage to the sea, as promised by Saladin. As Saladin entered Jerusalem, he expressed gratitude to God for the victory. Balian then journeyed back to his village in France. In a significant moment, a group of English knights arrived at the village. The leader of the group introduced himself as King Richard, informing Balian that they were embarking on a new crusade to reclaim Jerusalem from Saladin.